Hi, everybody, and good afternoon. Hopefully this will help you prepare for your close process and just actually managing the close process throughout the year, too. So this is just basically a high-level agenda of what we're going to cover today. So I'm going to go over, which just seems strange, but things that you don't have to do any longer in your year-end close process. Then we'll talk about year-end prep, fiscal year-end close, creating your fiscal year reporting periods, and 1099 prep and processing, and some frequently asked questions regarding 1099s. So this, to me, is pretty much an important slide, and I think one of also the reasons that you guys decided to move over to Sage Intacct, a cloud-based solution. These are things that you no longer have to concern yourself about or worry about. You no longer need to take a data backup before you actually go ahead and do your year-end close. You no longer need to worry about a disaster recovery plan. If the year-end close failed, the restoring of the backup and the testing to make sure the backup was complete, you no longer have to worry about that. Biggest thing too is that you no longer have to worry about finding space on your server to store that backup. You no longer have to purge history or lose access to detailed transactions. You no longer need to install all those nasty service update patches for year-end documents like 1099s, and you no longer have to do an official roll forward of retained earnings. So it actually it happens automatically with Intacct every year. Actually, it happens every month. Retained earnings is rolled forward. So that to me, like I said, is a really good slide because it takes a lot of burden off of you and reduces the stress at year-end on your part. There are things we have to do, year-end prep, and pretty much every month prep, meaning closing our subledgers. So you want to probably go ahead and close your subledgers after you're done with your transactions. And to do that, you basically, every module, AP, AR, has the same thing. It's actually, and this is a screenshot of the AP module, under all, you'll see under more, there's a subledger, and you can close the subledger. Best practice is to do it at the top level if you're a multi-entity shared environment. And when you go ahead and close, in this situation, you're going to see the AP subledger close. You can actually close it for a particular entity, or you can close it for all entities. And to leave it, to close it for all entities, you just leave the entity group blank, and then you would just close it for that entity for that period. Best practice is to close as you go. So close monthly. If you have a hard close every month or quarter, close each quarter as you go, and it's as simple as closing it. It can always be reopened, but closing process is pretty straightforward. Thing to note that with this is that you would be closing the subledger. So if you're closing the subledger as of December of 2019, you can still transact. You can still do journal entries in your general ledger and close your general ledger for 2019 in January and do your final adjustments, but your subledgers would be locked down. Another thing with year-end prep would be obviously your reconciliation of your control accounts to your subledgers. Best thing to do with that is to run the aging report in each module. So AP would be the vendor aging report, AR would be the customer aging report. And what you want to do is when you're running the aging reports, you want to use the report as of date, you want to use selected date. And then the selected date would be the period that you're closing. So 12/31/19 if you're closing out at the end of your calendar year. And it would be based on, down below here, you'll see GL posting date. That basically would then run your aging report for vendor and customer, and it would actually age the documents based on how it was posted in the general ledger. And then you would compare that to your control account. If there's an out of balance, things that you might want to check for would be any manual journal entries that were posted to those control accounts, check for any issues with cutoff dates, and then if you still can't find it, give us a call at RKL and we'll be happy to assist. One thing that they just added this year in 2019, which is very helpful, is now you're able to disallow direct posting on your control accounts. So it's right there in General Ledger Setup. This is just a screenshot of accounts payable. And you notice down below here, what I highlighted in yellow, disallow direct posting. You can enable that for your control accounts. And what that would mean is that you can no longer do journal entries. Nobody can mistakenly make a journal entry to accounts payable, accounts receivable, or anything like that. And that would limit the issues of getting out of balance. Another best practice is to actually encourage that for retained earnings. I've seen some people actually make postings for retained earnings. You really don't want to. You want the system to close out retained earnings on its own. So we talked about the subledgers. The general ledger close is as easy as a subledger. Very, very super easy. Closing of the periods, basically once you're done with all your adjustments and all your closeouts, audit adjustments or whatever to that fiscal year, what you want to do is you want to go ahead and close the period. And that is also under here. I'm going to go ahead and minimize this a little bit and bring over my screen. That might be a little helpful. Sometimes it flips around. There we go. You guys can see my Intacct screen. So now to close out a period in general ledger, you would go here and then you would see close books. And when you do close the books here, if you're in a multi-entity shared environment, you would have the option to close it by entity, or if you leave it open, you can go ahead and close it for all entities. And again, at any point in time, let's just say that you have audit adjustments that come in a little bit later, you can go ahead and open it up and then make changes and post anything that you want. And again, these are permissionable options to open and close periods. Those are in permissions, so you might want to be careful, take a look and see who gets permissions to open and close periods. Okay. The next thing to do is create your fiscal year reporting periods. And I'm emphasizing reporting because your actual fiscal calendar is already established. And that's in the system embedded. You don't have to worry about it. But these are reporting periods when you're running your financial reports or you're running a general ledger or a trial balance. You can actually manually create them, but there is a shortcut. And if you have permission to do this, it's going to save you a lot of time. So under company, setup and import data. And I'm actually going to show you this because I run into a lot of clients that don't know about this, and they actually manually create their fiscal reporting periods, which can be time consuming and a bit of a pain. If you go into company and under here, go to setup, you're going to see this thing called import data. And again, you want to make sure that you limit permissions. Only certain people should have access to this, so you want to check your permissions and your security. And if you have questions on that, feel free to call RKL and we'll be able to help you with that. But if you scroll down here, you're going to look for reporting periods right here, and you'll see reporting periods. And if you select default, then you go ahead and hit create. It will go ahead and create your reporting period for you. So you don't have to actually physically go in there and create your reporting periods. So then I'm just going to go back here, look at take a view of those, and you'll see that my 2020 reporting periods was just created. So those reporting periods are used to actually when you're actually running your financial statements. So that's what they use. That's what they're looking at. So again, these are just reporting periods, not fiscal calendar periods, but you need them for all reporting in the system. And this is just a slide deck of what I just showed you. So, and you can get the video will have this, and I think you can get a copy of the slide deck. So just if you need it. And again, the view of the reporting periods. Okay, so that's basically the year-end close. We went through, we closed the subledger, we did our reconciliation of the subledger, we did all our year-end journal entries into the system, we closed our GL, we created our new reporting periods. It's as simple as that. You don't have to worry about anything else. You didn't have to actually do a complete retained earnings roll forward like you have to do in a lot of other systems. But here's a couple things to remember that I find helpful. So at year-end, make a year-end and a month-end checklist. Develop and document your close processes. Define tasks, responsibilities to your team members. Set up due dates, assign responsibility. You want to lock down retained earnings, think about the disallowed posting. Nobody should be making journal entries into retained earnings. You also want to lock down your control accounts for accounts payable, accounts receivable, inventory if you have it. No one should be making direct journal entries into those control accounts. And again, just a reminder, no need to touch retained earnings or perform an official close process. The system does it for you. And just remember to reconcile your subledgers. If you do it monthly or quarterly, that would be a big help. And if there's any issues at year-end close or reconciliation or anything like that, feel free to reach out to your RKL consultant. We're here to help you. So the next slide I'm going to talk about is the nasty 1099 prep and processing. So to purchase, you can actually purchase your forms from Intacct, and at the home page under resources, you can go check and supplies, and that actually brings you in to the forms of Intacct, and you can actually purchase it there. And just so you know where it's at, because again, I've had some clients that didn't even know it was there. So it's right here. When you hit this little thing that looks like a home, it brings you to your home screen. And then in the home screen, right under here under resources, you'll see checks and supplies. That actually is the link to actually bring you into the order form, and so you can actually order your documents from Intacct. Bear with me a minute. Okay, so for 1099 prep and processing, it's all in the vendor setup. So you need to go ahead and establish your vendor as a 1099 vendor. And that is done under vendor setup, and that would be under setup, vendors, and actually the additional information tab. That's where you go ahead and tag them as 1099 eligible, and then you identify the 1099 form and box. And I'll just show you that real quick. Okay. Under here, if you go into accounts payable, and you can go into vendors, or you can go into vendor setup, the same thing, but I'll just go in here under vendors, and it would be, and again, this is my sample company, so these are just all test vendors. Go into here. It'll be under additional information. This one is already tagged as a 1099, but it would be, you would just go ahead and tag this right here, the 1099 name. So this is going to be the name that would appear in the 1099 if it should be something different than the name than the print as name. So that's just something that you want to keep aware of, that if you have to have a different name on the 1099, you would populate it here. But basically here you would click and you would check your form and the box that you would need, that would need to be tracked, that you want the 1099 amounts tracked. So the next thing too is to think about if you had like a mid-season or mid-year go live. So all the 1099 payments in the system, in your legacy system, you would need to go ahead, accumulate, and bring those over. Also, a good thing to know is that if you're actually using a vendor throughout the year and you realize, 3/4 of the way in the year that, oh, that's a 1099 vendor, you can go ahead and establish them as a 1099 vendor, and you can contact us. There's a way to actually go ahead and have it go back and read the payments, or you can go ahead and just update the payments in the box here. So for instance, if let's say this is the year 2019, and I realized that, we did a mid-year conversion and I paid $10,000 out of my old system, what I would end up doing is coming in here and just updating one of the boxes, and let's say it was 1099 and rents or something like that, or other income, and I would just go ahead and just say, okay, I would put $10,000 in here, and then Intacct would accumulate the rest of the additional payments that I've made to that vendor throughout the rest of the year, and then it would start with $10,000 and then whatever we paid through Intacct. So that's how you would actually handle any like mid-year conversions, or if you actually didn't realize that the vendor was a 1099 vendor from the get-go. 1099 reports and printing, it's under here, under the third column here under accounts payable. These are all the forms that you can print and create files from. The other option too, the other neat feature too, is that you can exclude credit card transactions. Any payments that were based on the credit card, those are not 1099able, so you can exclude those. Obviously, you track them in the system, but you don't want to include them for 1099 purposes, so the system will filter those out and exclude them from the 1099 file. So to create the file, you can create the file, and the file can be created in a CSV or Excel format. These services, you can actually go ahead and use, you can actually go ahead and print out the hard copy, or if you have to go ahead and utilize a file, there are third-party services that we partner with that can help us and get that file out to the Internal Revenue Service. So these are just frequently asked questions about 1099. So if you have a third-party, if you have a third-party if you have a third party that actually prints and mails your 1099 forms, not a problem. You create the 1099 file, and you can actually send that to them in a CSV or Excel format, and they can actually go ahead and publish your 1099s for you or transmit your 1099s. Typically, if there are over 250 1099s, it needs to be an electronic file. And like I said, in our marketplace, we have third-party programs that we work with, and they would actually help transmit the file. If you have to print the actual forms, then our tax forms are right there at Sage Intacct support. And that was at the Resources Center on the home page that you can get the forms. And these are the forms that Intacct supports. So all the 1099 forms, 1096, you'll see that, and W2Gs if you need it. Updating and change the 1099 amount. How to update or change the 1099 amount for a vendor? So we kind of went through that. So that would be in the additional information tab under vendor. You would go ahead and click on the 1099 form link, and then you would go down to the box and you could update it. Now notice sometimes you may need to subtract it for some reasons. So you can go ahead plus or minus out the amount to actually adjust to the correct 1099 amount if there's an issue. And 9 times out of 10, the issue is because it was a mid-year conversion, or maybe you forgot that that vendor was even a 1099 until you realized when you were processing 1099s at year end that that was a 1099able vendor, and then you can set them up and update the box for the amount that was actually paid out to them. That's basically the slide deck. It's pretty straightforward year-end process with Sage Intacct. In the 1099 process, they make it pretty simple. But if there are any issues or you need any assistance, we're here to help. So feel free, reach out to RKL at support@rklesolutions.com, or Intacct Online Community is very helpful at any point in time. And definitely reach out to us. We're here to help you.